Welcome back to Leading Today with Dr. Lisa Bagby, where we talk about leadership, emotional intelligence, and what it really takes to lead people and how you can improve your leadership skills, whether you're a new or seasoned leader. Today, I want to take you somewhere a little different. I want to talk to you about Malcolm Gladwell and how his books help me glean insights into leadership. It's really about what he taught me on exceptional leadership. He is one of my favorite authors and thought leaders. So many of you may know Malcolm Gladwell from books like The Tipping Point and Outliers. And if you've read either of those books, you know that Gladwell has a way of taking something that seems ordinary and saying, wait a minute, what if we're looking at this completely wrong? Well, that's exactly what I want to do today. Because when I read Gladwell, I don't just see books about social trends, success, or human behavior. I see leadership lessons. And one of the biggest lessons I take away is this: exceptional leaders are rarely accidents. We see someone who is an extraordinary leader and say, they're just naturally gifted. They're charismatic, brilliant, confident. They have executive presence, even though that's not a word I really like to use. But also, we say they know how to communicate. But Gladwell, he challenges us to look underneath the outcome. What opportunities did they have? Who invested in them? How much did they practice? What environment shaped them? Who gave them access? And probably most importantly, what did they repeatedly do that made them exceptional? So today, I'm going to give you three leadership lessons that are inspired by Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers and The Tipping Point. I want you to think about these not only as lessons for becoming a better leader, but as lessons for developing other people. So, tip one: stop calling it talent when it may be practice. Let's start with one of Gladwell's most famous ideas from Outliers: the 10,000-hour rule. Oh, do I remember this from that book? My goodness, this was a standout chapter. In that chapter, Gladwell discusses research associated with psychologist Anders Ericsson and the idea that achieving exceptional expertise requires an enormous amount of practice. In fact, Gladwell writes it this way. He says, researchers have settled on what they believe is the magic number for true expertise: 10,000 hours. Now, I don't want you to hear 10,000 hours as some magical mathematical formula or for that number to scare you. That's not really the leadership lesson. The leadership lesson is that mastery takes practice. So think about that. How many times do organizations promote someone into leadership and then expect them to perform like an experienced leader immediately? Did that happen to you? So, I mean, what we say a lot of times is, oh, you're a high performer. Congratulations, you're now a leader. And then we give them a team, a budget, a performance management problem, a difficult employee, a strategic initiative, and perhaps 15 minutes of leadership training. And then we're surprised when they struggle. But think about this differently. You wouldn't take someone who has never played piano and put them on stage at Carnegie Hall and say, hey, you're talented, figure it out. So, why do we do that with leadership? Leadership is a skill. Communication is a skill. Emotional intelligence is a skill. Conflict management is a skill. Giving feedback is a skill. Strategic thinking is a skill. And skills require practice. So, here's the question I want leaders to ask: how much practice have I actually given this person before judging their leadership ability? And here's the second question: how much practice have I given myself? Because sometimes we confuse experience with mastery. You can have 20 years of experience, or you can have 1 year of experience repeated 20 times. Those are not necessarily the same thing. So when you're developing leaders, don't just identify potential, create opportunities for practice. Let them lead the meeting, let them facilitate the difficult conversation, let them present to senior leaders, make decisions, let them get feedback, let them try again. Because you don't develop leaders by telling them what leadership looks like. You develop leaders by giving them opportunities to practice leadership. Tip two, don't underestimate the power of persistence and context. The second lesson comes from Gladwell's discussion of Asian mathematics achievement and rice farming in his book Outliers. This was a fascinating chapter to me as well. But this is an area where I want us to be thoughtful. Gladwell is not saying that Asian people are simply born better at mathematics. His argument is so much more interesting. What he explores is how cultural practices, in particular, the historical demands of rice agriculture, and how it could contribute to values around persistence, effort, and sustained work, what many of us might relate to as work ethic. The rice farming is really labor intensive. You can't simply plant rice and walk away. It requires attention, work, precision, persistence. And Gladwell connects those cultural practices to attitudes toward effort and mathematics. Now, here's the leadership lesson. We often mistake persistence for talent. But think about the employee who keeps working on the problem after everyone else has given up. We may say, "Oh, she's so smart." Maybe, but perhaps she's also more comfortable struggling. Maybe she has learned that not understanding something immediately doesn't mean she's incapable. Maybe she has developed the habit of saying, "Well, I don't know this yet." That's an entirely different mindset. And leaders who have a responsibility, they create environments where people can develop that persistence. Because sometimes the difference between the person who succeeds and the person who doesn't isn't intelligence. It's what happens after the first failure, the first rejection, the first difficult assignment, the first time someone says, "You're not ready." Great leaders teach people that not yet is not the same thing as not capable. And this is especially important when we're talking about equity in leadership development, because organizations, they often look at outcomes and say, "Well, why isn't this person ready?" But I want you to ask, ready according to what opportunity? Did they have a mentor? Did they have the stretch assignment? Did they have access to decision makers? Did someone explain the unwritten rules? Did someone give them feedback? Or did they have a chance to fail safely? Because sometimes we're measuring someone's potential after they've had 3 opportunities against someone else's performance after they've had 30. That's not necessarily a talent difference. That's an opportunity difference. And that's one of the most powerful leadership lessons in Outliers. Now, tip 3, if people can't tell you the truth, your leadership isn't as strong as you think. I just talked about this in another episode, but I'm going to delve a little differently and deeper on this one. But this third lesson is honestly my favorite for you. So in Outliers, Gladwell, he examines airline crashes and the role communication can play in aviation. I really hope you all have read Outliers. This one leaves you really deeply thinking. So you might think that plane crashes are primarily about technical mistakes. But Gladwell, well, as per usual, he examines another issue: communication between people with different levels of authority. What happens when the first officer sees something the captain doesn't? What happens when a junior person recognizes a problem but doesn't feel comfortable challenging the person in charge. That isn't simply a communication problem, it's a leadership problem. And here's where I want to bring this into the workplace. So think about your organization. Can your employees tell you you're wrong? Can they say, well, I don't understand the strategy? Can they say, I think we're making a big mistake? Can they tell you, I'm concerned about this decision? Can someone junior to you challenge you without worrying that their career is going to suffer? Because if the answer is no, you may have compliance, but you don't necessarily have leadership. And this is where the tipping point actually becomes incredibly relevant. Gladwell talks about connectors, mavens, and salesmen. He calls them, quote, the law of the few, unquote, where he identifies them as critical to making an idea spread. Connectors bring people together. Mavens accumulate and share knowledge. Salesmen persuade. In other words, influence doesn't belong only to the person with the biggest title. There are people throughout your organization who can move ideas. They can build relationships. They can translate information. They can influence culture. And smart leaders don't try to be the smartest person in the room. They create a room where the smartest information can reach them. That's a huge difference. Your title should never become a communication barrier. So now 3 questions that I want you to take with you. Let's bring these 3 lessons together. Number 1, practice. Who are you developing right now? And have you given them enough opportunities to practice the skills that you are asking them to demonstrate? Number 2, persistence and opportunity. When someone isn't performing at the level you expect, are you questioning their ability or are you examining their opportunity? Because development doesn't happen in a vacuum. And number 3, communication. Can people tell you the truth? Not the answer they think you want, not the answer that keeps them safe. The truth. Because the higher you move in an organization, the more dangerous it becomes when people only tell you what they think you want to hear. So here's what I love about Gladwell's work. He makes us look beneath the obvious. And that's what a good leader should do. Don't just look at the high performer. Look at the environment that helped create the performance. Don't just look at the successful executive. Look at the opportunities that person received. And don't just ask why someone isn't succeeding. Ask what they have or haven't been given the opportunity to practice. And don't just evaluate whether someone communicates well. Ask whether you've created an environment where truth can travel upward. Because great leadership isn't simply about having exceptional people. It's about creating the conditions in which people can become exceptional. So I'll leave you with this. Your job as a leader isn't just to identify talent. Your job is to create the conditions that allow talent to become mastery. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can give another is not another training course. It's an opportunity to practice, an opportunity to struggle, an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to speak, and an opportunity to become the leader they haven't become yet. I'm Dr. Lisa Bagby, and this is Leading Today. Until next time, remember, leadership isn't about what you know. It's about what you practice, what you create, and what you make possible for other people. If this episode resonated with you, please share it, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me today on Leading Today.